I woke to the sound of whispers slicing through the dark sharp as a blade. At 4 a.m., my heart thudded against my ribs, a warning I couldn't ignore. The house was still, too still, the kind of quiet that screams something's wrong. I lay in bed, my quilt heavy with the weight of decades, listening to those hushed voices creeping from the hallway. They came from your mother's room, my sweet Emily, just 16, her door locked tight as always, but it wasn't her voice. It was his, my stepbrother Carl, a man who'd slithered back into our lives like a shadow we couldn't shake. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet cold against the hardwood, and pressed my ear to the wall. "You don't tell anyone," he hissed, low and venomous. "Not your mama, not your grandma, nobody." My blood turned to ice. What was he doing in her room? The house smelled of old cedar and the faint lavender of Emily's perfume, drifting through the cracks of her door. The air felt thick, like it was holding its breath, waiting for me to act. It was spring, 1987, in our little clapboard house in Tennessee, the kind with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the wind. The moon hung low outside, casting silver streaks across the floor, and I could hear the distant hum of crickets, oblivious to the storm brewing inside these walls. I stood frozen, my nightgown clinging to my skin, damp with sweat despite the chill. Carl had been living with us for 6 months, ever since he showed up with a duffel bag and a smile that never reached his eyes. I'd let him in because he was family, step-family, sure, but family all the same. Mama raised me to believe blood or no blood, you don't turn your back on kin. But now, standing in the dark, I wondered if I'd invited the devil himself. I crept closer to Emily's door, my hands trembling as I gripped the knob. Locked, of course. She'd started locking it the day Carl moved in, said it made her feel safer. I thought she was just being a teenager craving privacy. Now each whisper from inside felt like a needle in my chest. "Emily," I called softly, my voice barely a breath. No aunt, just Carl's low murmur, words I couldn't catch, and then a stifled sob. Hers. My knees buckled, but I caught myself against the wall, the peeling wallpaper rough under my palms. I wanted to pound on that door, scream his name, drag him out by his greasy hair. But something stopped me. Fear, maybe. Or the sinking dread that whatever was happening in there was bigger than I could handle alone. "Carl," I said, louder now, my voice cracking like dry wood. The whisper stopped. Silence swallowed the house again, heavy and suffocating. I heard the floorboards creak inside, then the soft click of the lock. The door opened just a sliver, and Carl's face appeared, his eyes glinting like a cornered animal's. "What do you want, Ruth?" he said, his voice smooth as oil, but I saw the sweat beading on his forehead. "It's late." "It's late. What are you doing in my daughter's room?" I asked, my hands balling into fists. I could smell his cologne, cheap and sharp, mixing with the lavender. It made my stomach turn. He smirked, leaning against the doorframe. At just talking, Ruth, she had a nightmare, needed comforting. His words were calm, but they dripped with something dark, something that made my skin crawl. "Emily," I called past him, trying to peer into the room. "You okay, baby?" She appeared behind him, her face pale, her eyes wide and glassy. "Oh, I'm fine, Mama," she said, her voice small, like she was reading a script. She clutched her nightgown, pulling it tight around her. Just go back to bed." I wanted to push past Carl to grab her and hold her close, but the way she looked at me, distant, scared, stopped me cold. "We'll talk in the morning," I said, my voice firm, though inside I was crumbling. Carl nodded, that smirk still plastered on his face, and closed the door. The lock clicked again, and I was alone in the hallway, my heart pounding so loud I thought it'd wake the neighbors. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall where I'd hung a faded photo of your grandpa, gone 5 years now. His smile, warm and steady, seemed to mock me. What would he have done? He'd have kicked Carl out that first day, never let him set foot in this house. But me? I'd been too soft, too trusting, thinking I could keep the peace for Emily's sake. Now my mind raced with memories. Carl as a boy, always watching, always lurking, his hands too quick, his excuses too smooth. Mama used to say he was troubled, but I never saw the depth of it. Not until now. I thought of the summer when I was 12, when Carl, barely 15, had cornered me in the barn, his breath hot on my neck, whispering things no brother should say. I'd pushed him away, told Mama, and she'd whipped him raw, but he never left. He just got quieter, sneakier. And now, here he was in my house, in my daughter's room. The realization hit me like a slap. This wasn't new. This was a pattern, a poison seeping through our family for years, and I'd been too blind to see it. Lord, give me strength, I whispered, my hands clasped so tight my knuckles ached. I could still hear Emily's sob in my mind, fragile and broken. I thought of you, my grandchildren, asleep in your own homes now, safe, I hope. I wanted to protect your mother then, like I want to protect you now. But that night, I didn't know how. Ow. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling, the moonlight painting shadows that looked like hands reaching out. Sleep never came. Instead, I made a promise to myself. I'd get answers, no matter what it took. Carl wasn't going to hurt my girl, not while I was still breathing. The next morning, the kitchen smelled of coffee and burnt toast, the air heavy with the weight of what I'd heard. Emily sat at the table, her eyes fixed on her plate, pushing scrambled eggs around with her fork. Carl was there too, reading the paper like nothing had happened, his boots tapping a lazy rhythm on the floor. "Morning, Ruth," he said, not looking up. "Asleep well?" I ignored him, sitting across from Emily. "A baby, we need to talk," I said, keeping my voice soft, like I was coaxing a scared animal. "About last night." Her fork froze and her eyes flicked to Carl, just for a second before dropping back to her plate. Nothing to talk about," she mumbled. "I told you I had a bad dream." "Emily," I said, leaning closer, my hands itching to reach for hers. "You can tell me anything." "You know that's all right." Carl folded the paper, his chair scraping as he stood. Let the girl eat, Ruth. She's fine." He walked to the sink, his back to us, but I could feel his eyes on us somehow, like he was watching through the walls. I wanted to scream, to grab him by the collar and demand the truth. But Emily's silence held me back. She wasn't just scared, she was ashamed. I could see it in the way her shoulders hunched, the way she wouldn't meet my eyes. My heart broke, splintering into 1,000 pieces. I'd failed her, hadn't I? Hadn't I? Head him into our home, let him get close. The guilt was a stone in my chest, heavy and cold. As Carl left the room, whistling like he hadn't a care in the world, I reached for Emily's hand. She pulled away, her chair screeching as she stood. "I'm going to school," she said, grabbing her bag. "And don't make a big deal out of nothing, Mama." But it wasn't nothing. I knew it in my bones, and as I watched her walk out the door, her ponytail swinging, I swore I'd uncover whatever Carl was hiding. For her, for us, for the family I was still trying to hold together. I didn't know then how deep the betrayal ran, or how it would tear us apart before it brought us back together. But that morning, with the taste of coffee bitter on my tongue, and the weight of my failure pressing down, I knew one thing: I wasn't going to let him win. The sun hung low over the Tennessee hills, painting the sky a bruised purple as I stood on the porch, watching Emily's school bus disappear down the gravel road. The air was warm, thick with the scent of blooming honeysuckle and the faint tang of diesel from the bus. My hands gripped the railing, splintered wood digging into my palms, grounding me against the storm in my chest. It'd been hours since breakfast, since Emily's eyes dodged mine, since Carl's whistle echoed like a taunt. The house behind me felt like a stranger, its walls holding secrets I couldn't yet name. I wanted to march back inside, confront Carl, and demand the truth, but something told me I needed more than suspicion. I needed proof. For Emily's sake, I had to be sure. I stepped back into the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my feet, the morning's coffee still bitter on the counter. Carl was gone, off to town, he'd said, with that same oily smile. The house was mine for now, and I wasn't going to waste it. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs, each creak louder than the last, like the house itself was warning me to turn back. Emily's room was at the end of the hall, her door still closed, the lock glinting in the dim light. I didn't have the key, but I didn't need it. Not yet. Instead, I went to the guest room, Carl's room, where the air smelled of stale cigarettes and something sour, like unwashed clothes left too long. The room was sparse, a sagging mattress, a duffel bag in the corner, and a nightstand with a chipped lamp. I hesitated, my fingers twitching, knowing this was a line I couldn't uncross. But then I heard Emily's sob again in my mind, that fragile sound from last night, and it pushed me forward. I opened the duffel bag, my hands shaking as I rifled through flannel shirts and crumpled receipts. At the bottom, tucked inside a sock, I found it, a small leather-bound notebook, its edges worn soft. My breath caught as I opened it, the pages filled with Carl's jagged scrawl, dates, names, places. And there, halfway down a page, was Emily's name, circled in red ink, with words that made my stomach lurch. She's scared, but she'll keep quiet. Always does. What are you doing, Ruth? Carl's voice cut through the silence, sharp and close. I spun around, the notebook slipping from my hands, landing with a soft thud on the floor. He stood in the doorway, his frame filling it, his eyes narrow and glinting. I hadn't heard the truck pull up, hadn't heard the door. My mouth went dry, but I forced myself to stand tall. Looking for answers, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. What's this, Carl? I pointed to the notebook, my heart hammering so loud I thought he'd hear it. He stepped closer, his boots heavy on the floorboards, and bent to pick it up. You shouldn't be snooping. Ain't polite. Don't talk to me about polite, I snapped, my fear burning into anger. What were you doing in Emily's room last night? And don't give me that nightmare nonsense. His smile faltered, just for a second, and I saw it. Guilt, raw and ugly, flickering in his eyes. You're paranoid, Ruth. Always have been. She's fine. You heard her this morning. I heard her lie, I said, stepping closer, close enough to smell the tobacco on his breath. I heard her scared. And I found your notebook. Her name, Carl. Why's her name in there? He laughed, a low, hollow sound that made my skin crawl. You're reading too much into things, sister. Maybe you're the one who needs to calm down. He turned to leave, but I grabbed his arm, my nails digging into his sleeve. You walk away, I said, my voice trembling now. If you've touched her, Carl, if you've hurt her, I swear to God, you'll what? He cut me off, yanching his arm free. His face was inches from mine, his breath hot. You gonna throw me out? Tell the whole town your stepbrother's a monster? Go ahead. See who they believe? A crazy old widow or me? I wanted to scream, to claw at him, but his words hit like a punch. He was right. People in this town loved Carl, always had. The charming drifter, the man who'd sweet-talked his way into their good graces. And me? I was just Ruth, the widow who kept to herself, raising a teenage daughter alone. But I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Get out of my house, I said, my voice low, every word carved from stone. Pack your things and go. He stared at me, his eyes searching mine, like he was weighing his odds. Weighed his odds. Then he smirked again, stepping back. Fine, I'll go. But you're making a mistake, Ruth. You're gonna regret this. As he grabbed his duffel and stormed out, the front door slamming behind him, I sank to the floor, my hands shaking. The notebook was gone, but its words were burned into my mind. Emily's name circled in red. She'll keep quiet. My chest ached with the weight of it, with the fear that I was too late. I thought of your grandpa again, his steady hands, his quiet strength. He'd have known what to do. But he was gone, and it was just me now, fighting a battle I didn't fully understand. That evening, Emily came home late, her sneakers muddy, her eyes red-rimmed. She dropped her bag by the door and headed for the stairs, but I caught her arm. The living room smelled of the lemon polish I'd used that afternoon, trying to scrub away the dread. The old clock ticked on the mantel, too loud, too steady. I don't want to talk, she said, pulling her arm free. Her voice was sharp, but her hands were trembling, twisting the hem of her sweater. But Emily, I found something today, I said, keeping my voice soft, like I was coaxing a bird to land. In Carl's room, a notebook. Your name was in it. Her face went white, her eyes wide, and for a moment I thought she'd bolt. You went through his stuff? She whispered, her voice breaking. Hey, Mama, why would you do that? Because I heard him last night, I said, leaning closer. In your room, whispering, telling you to keep quiet. What's he doing, Emily? What's he making you hide? She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It's nothing, okay? Just leave it alone. She stood, her movements jerky like a puppet with cut strings. I'm fine. You're not fine, I said, my voice rising to spite myself. I see it, baby. I see you pulling away, locking your door, barely eating. Tell me what's going on, please. She froze, her back to me, her shoulders shaking. You wouldn't understand, she whispered. Oh, you'd hate me. Those words broke something in me, a dam I'd been holding back for years. I stood, wrapping my arms around her, pulling her close despite her stiffness. I could never hate you, I said, my voice thick with tears. A never. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. She didn't hug me back, but she didn't pull away either. We stood there, the clock ticking, the air heavy with the scent of lemon and sorrow. I thought of my own childhood, of Carl's whispers in the barn, of the shame I'd carried for years, thinking it was my fault. I wouldn't let Emily carry that same weight, not if I could help it. A baby, I said, pulling back to look at her, my hands on her shoulders. Whatever he's done, it's not your fault. You hear me? It's not on you. She nodded, just barely, her eyes on the floor. And then she said it so soft I almost missed it. He's been coming in at night. For weeks. He says things. Touches my hair. Says if I tell, he'll hurt you. The world tilted, my vision blurring with rage and heartbreak. I pulled her close again, my arms trembling, and made another promise. Carl would pay. I didn't know how yet, but I'd make sure of it. For Emily. For you, my grandchildren, who'd never know this kind of pain if I could stop it. The truth was out now, and there was no going back. The living room felt smaller that night. The walls closing in as Emily's words hung in the air like smoke, choking me. The lemon polish scent was gone, replaced by the damp, heavy smell of rain seeping through the open window. Outside, a storm was brewing, the kind that rattles shutters and makes the world feel unsteady. It was late, past 9, and the house was dark except for the flickering light of a single lamp. Emily sat curled on the couch, her knees to her chest, her face half hidden by her hair. I knelt in front of her, my hands on hers, feeling the tremble in her fingers. The clock's ticking was relentless, each second a hammer against my heart. I wanted to scream, to tear the world apart for what Carl had done, but I had to stay calm, for her. "Oh, baby," I said, my voice low, barely steady. "How long has this been going on?" My throat burned with the question, but I needed to know, needed to understand how deep this wound went. Emily's eyes stayed on her lap, her fingers twisting the loose threads of her sweater. "Since he moved in?" she whispered. "Huh. At first, it was just talking. He'd sit on the porch, ask about school, act all nice. But then she stopped, her breath hitching. A couple months ago, he started coming into my room. Late, when you were asleep. Said he was checking on me, but he'd stay. Too long. My vision blurred, hot tears stinging my eyes. I saw myself at 12, Carl's shadow looming in the barn, his breath hot and wrong. I'd pushed it down, buried it under years of guilt, thinking I'd been too weak to stop him. Now here was my daughter, carrying that same shame, and I'd let it happen under my own roof. The rage in my chest was a wildfire, but the guilt was heavier, a stone sinking me to the floor. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice cracking. I hated myself for asking, for putting that on her, but the words slipped out. She looked up then, her eyes wide, glistening. "I thought you'd be mad, or you wouldn't believe me," he said. "He said you'd kick me out if I told. That you'd think I was lying to cause trouble." "You, Emily," I said, pulling her into my arms. She was stiff at first, then melted against me, her sobs shaking us both. Her hair smelled of strawberry shampoo, the same kind she'd used since she was a little girl, and it broke me all over again. I'd never, ever think that. "You're my heart, baby." My whole heart. He stayed like that for a long time, the rain tapping the windows, the lamp casting shadows that danced like ghosts. I thought of you, my grandchildren, and how I'd tell you this story one day. Not the pain, but the strength it took to face it. I wanted you to know your mother was a fighter, even when she felt small. But right then, holding her, I knew the fight wasn't over. Carl was out there, maybe in town, maybe closer, and I didn't trust him to stay gone. "We need to go to the police," I said finally, pulling back to look at her. My voice was firm, but inside I was terrified. This town was small, the kind where gossip spread faster than truth, and Carl had always known how to twist a story. Emily shook her head, her eyes wide with panic. No, Mama, please. They won't believe me. You know how people talk about us. They'll say I'm making it up, that I wanted it." Her voice broke on the last words, and I felt my heart shatter again. "They'll believe us," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "We'll make them. We have each other, and that's enough." She didn't answer, just looked away, her jaw tight. I knew that look, stubborn, scared, like she was building a wall I couldn't climb. I wanted to push, to beg her to trust me, but I couldn't force her. Not yet, so I stood, my knees aching from kneeling, and went to the kitchen. The phone sat on the counter, its black cord tangled like my thoughts. I picked it up, my fingers hovering over the buttons. I could call Sheriff Tate, tell him everything, but what proof did I have? A notebook I didn't have anymore, a scared girl who might not talk? Carl's smug face flashed in my mind, his threat from earlier. See who they believe. I set the phone down, my hands shaking. Instead, I grabbed a glass from the cupboard, the glass cool and smooth against my palm, and filled it with water. The sink dripped, a steady plink-plink that matched the rain outside. I brought the glass to Emily, who took it without looking at me. A drink? I said softly. Then we'll figure this out. Together. She nodded, sipping slowly, her eyes still distant. I sat beside her, my mind racing. I thought of the past, of Mama's warnings about Carl, how she'd called him a snake in the grass. I'd ignored her, thinking she was too hard on him, but now I saw it. His charm was a mask, hiding something rotten. And then, like a lightning strike, a memory hit me, sharp and vivid. Not my memory, but Mama's. She told me once, late at night when I was a teenager, about a girl in town. Lila, her name was, who'd left suddenly when we were kids. Rumors swirled that she'd gotten pregnant. But Mama said it was darker than that. Carl had been involved. She'd hinted, but never gave details. I'd brushed it off as gossip. Now it felt like a puzzle piece clicking into place. Emily, I said, my voice careful, has Carl ever mentioned anyone else? Another girl, maybe? Someone from before? Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. It swallowed my throat dry. I swallowed my throat dry. I remember something. A girl named Lila, from when I was young. I think Carl might have hurt her too. Emily's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Water spread across the hardwood, catching the lamplight like a mirror. He talked about a girl once, she said, her voice barely audible. I didn't say her name. Just said she was like me, said she learned to keep her mouth shut. The room spun, the air too thin to breathe. It wasn't just Emily. It wasn't just now. Carl had been doing this for years, maybe decades, leaving a trail of broken girls behind him. The realization was a knife, twisting in my gut. I knelt to pick up the glass shards, my hands shaking, the sharp edges biting my fingers. Blood welled up, red and warm, but I barely felt it. All I could think was, how many? How many others? Mama, I'm sorry, Emily said, her voice small, her hands covering her face. She looked at me then, her eyes searching mine, and for the first time I saw a flicker of hope. But it was fragile, like a candle in the wind, and I knew we weren't safe yet. Carl was out there, and he wasn't the kind to slink away quietly. I thought of you, my grandchildren, and the legacy I wanted to leave, not one of pain, but of courage. I'd fight for Emily, for Lila, for all the girls Carl had hurt. But first, I had to protect her. I had to keep him away. That night, I locked every door, checked every window, the rain hammering outside like it was trying to get in. Emily slept in my bed, her breathing uneven, her hand clutching mine. I lay awake, listening to the storm, my mind racing. Carl's notebook was gone, but his words were seared into me. She'll keep quiet. Not anymore. Tomorrow, we'd go to the sheriff, proof or no proof. I'd make them listen. For Emily, for all of us. The rain hadn't stopped by morning, a relentless gray curtain that blurred the world outside our Tennessee home. The air was heavy with the scent of wet earth and the faint mildew of old wood, the kind that clings to a house that's seen too many storms. I stood in the kitchen, the coffee pot hissing, its bitter steam curling around me like a ghost. Emily was still asleep in my bed, her face peaceful for the first time in weeks, but I hadn't closed my eyes. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind, sounded like Carl's boots on the porch, his shadow creeping closer. My hands shook as I poured coffee, the mug warm against my palms, grounding me. Today, we'd go to Sheriff Tate. Today, we'd end this. I glanced at the clock. 6:17 a.m. So, it's ticking, a reminder that time was slipping away. The living room still held the shattered glass from Emily's dropped cup, glinting on the floor like tiny accusations. I hadn't cleaned it up, couldn't bring myself to erase the evidence of her confession, son. My fingers ached from the cuts, the blood dried in thin, dark lines. I thought of you, my grandchildren, and how I'd tell you this one day. Not the fear, but the fight. I wanted you to know your mother was stronger than she realized, and that your grandma, flawed as I was, would do anything to protect her. The phone rang, shrill and sudden, slicing through the quiet. I jumped, coffee splashing on my wrist, hot and stinging. I grabbed the receiver, my heart in my throat. Hello, Ruth. It was Carl, his voice low, like he was whispering in my ear. You didn't think I'd just leave, did you? My blood ran cold, my grip tightening on the phone. Where are you? I demanded, my voice sharper than I meant. I glanced at the windows, half expecting to see his face pressed against the glass. Close enough, he said, a chuckle threading through his words. You shouldn't have gone through my things, sister. That was a mistake. Don't you dare threaten me, I said, my voice trembling with rage. We know what you've done to Emily. I know about Lila, too. You're not getting away with this. Silence on the line, heavy and thick, then a slow exhale. Lila, he said like he was tasting the name. You've been digging, haven't you? Too bad you don't have proof. Nobody believed her either. My stomach twisted, but I forced myself to stay steady. I have Emily, I said. She's talking, and I'm taking her to the sheriff today. You're done, Carl. He laughed, a sound that clawed at my spine. You think Emily's gonna stand up in front of Tate and tell him her dirty little secrets? She's too scared, Ruth. You know it. And you? You're just a tired old woman with a grudge. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking so hard I knocked the mug to the floor. It shattered, coffee pooling like blood. The sound woke Emily, her footsteps soft but urgent as she appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. Mama, who was that? I turned, forcing a calm I didn't feel. A nobody baby? I lied, my voice soft. Get dressed, we're going to town. She nodded, but her eyes flickered with fear, like she knew it was him. I wanted to hold her, to promise it'd be okay, but the truth was I wasn't sure. Carl's words echoed in my mind. Nobody believed her either. And I felt the weight of decades pressing down, all the girls he'd silenced, all the pain he'd left behind. But not this time. Not my Emily. The drive to town was quiet, the rain drumming on the truck's roof, the wipers squeaking with every swipe. Emily sat beside me, her hands twisted in her lap, her face pale against the gray light. The town was waking up, its streets slick and shining, the diner's neon sign buzzing faintly. Sheriff Tate's office was a small brick building, its flag limp in the rain. I parked, my heart pounding, and turned to Emily. You don't have to say everything, I said, my hand on hers. Just enough. I'll be right there. She nodded, her lips tight, and we walked inside. The office smelled of old coffee and damp paper, the fluorescent lights harsh overhead. Tate, a burly man with tired eyes, looked up from his desk. Ruth, he said, nodding. What's this about? I took a breath, my hands clenching. It's about Carl. He's been hurting Emily, coming into her room at night, saying things touching her. It's been going on for months. Tate's eyes flicked to Emily, who stood half behind me, her arms crossed. Is that true, girl? He asked, his voice gentle but probing. Emily's jaw trembled, but she nodded. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. He scares me. Says if I tell, he'll hurt Mama. Tate leaned back, his chair creaking, his face unreadable. That's a serious accusation, he said. You got any proof? Witnesses? Anything solid? I felt my anger flare, hot and sharp. Her words solid, I snapped. And there's more. I found a notebook in his room with her name in it and others. I think he's done this before. To a girl named Lila, years ago. Tate's eyes narrowed, a flicker of recognition crossing his face. A Lila Monroe, he said, almost to himself. That was a long time ago. She left town, never pressed charges, because nobody believed her, I said, my voice rising. But you're gonna believe Emily. You're gonna do something, or I'll... Ruth, he cut me off, raising a hand. I hear you, but we need more than words. Carl's got a clean record here. Folks like him. I wanted to scream, to overturn his desk, but Emily's hand on my arm stopped me. And Mama, she said, her voice stronger now. Let me talk. She stepped forward, her shoulders straight, and told him everything. Every whisper, every late-night visit, every threat. Her voice shook, but it didn't break, and I felt a swell of pride so fierce it hurt. When she finished, Tate was quiet, his pen tapping the desk. All right, he said, finally. I'll bring him in for questioning. But Emily, you'll need to make a formal statement. Can you do that? She nodded, her eyes meeting his. We left the station, the rain still falling, but the air felt different, lighter, like the storm was breaking. Back home, I locked the doors again, my hands steadier now. Emily sat at the kitchen table, a glass of water in her hands, unbroken this time. What if he comes back? She asked, her voice small again. He won't, I said, though I wasn't sure. And if he does, he'll have to go through me. That night, the phone didn't ring. The house was quiet, the rain a soft patter now. Emily slept beside me again, her breathing even, her hand in mine. I thought of Lila, of the girls I'd never know, and of the strength it took for Emily to speak. I thought of you, my grandchildren, and the world I wanted for you, one where secrets didn't fester, where truth could heal. I'd failed Emily once, letting Carl into our home, but I wouldn't fail her again. The next morning, Tate called. They'd found Carl at a bar outside town, drunk and boasting. He'd confessed, not to everything, but enough. Enough for an arrest, enough for a chance at justice. It wasn't the end. There'd be a trial. Whispers in town, hard days ahead. But it was a start. I looked at Emily, laughing softly at something on the radio, and felt a weight lift. Not all of it, but enough. To you, my grandchildren, I say this: love fiercely, but trust carefully. Secrets can break you, but truth can set you free. Your mother was brave, braver than I ever was. And that's the legacy I leave you. Hold it close. Fight for it. Always.